Welcome to Golf and the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, he is Connor Evers, and today we are talking about maybe the best day of your trip. Day one. We're going to cover some tips to hit the ground running and really help you have a smooth start to your trip. But before we get there, Connor, we are kind of right in the afterglow of the Open Championship at Royal Port Rush. We've had just a flurry of activity over the last couple of weeks with folks putting their 2026 trips on the calendar. What's the latest and greatest up at H&B HQ?
Deej, appreciate it. Yes, the Open was incredible, very successful. Overall, I think it was good weather. There was a couple days where it was a little hit or miss. I think they had a delay during some practice rounds too, but both Saturday and Sunday was just incredible. And NBC did a really good job of showing the area, the Harbor Bar with Willie there, just kind of the general area was great. And I think they did an overall good job with just showing the telecast of the golf. And obviously, congratulations to Scotty Scheffler, and he is three-quarters of the way there to the Grand Slam. So it was amazing. It just gets me fired up for links golf, fired up to watch the ladies at Royal Porth Call. I'm very excited to obviously get over in general for myself in October, but even more excited to play the Dunluce Links here in October. So playing it on the year of. So it just creates a lot of excitement for golf, for the Open Championship, and just links golf in general. So just amazing. How much did you watch, Deej?
I caught a fair bit. It's one of those things where I tend to get up first thing in the morning, watch a little bit, and then I kind of get waylaid by the day and work and so forth. And then Sunday, I was actually over in St. Petersburg for the weekend. And so, I kind of had to make like a mad dash sprint back home because we needed to get there at least by the turn. And at that point, he's up by 5 or whatever it was. And it's like, all right, well, this is over, but I'm going to still watch it in because that closing stretch is really something. And I love the asides that they do during the telecast. Like you said, popping into the Harbor Bar and there's Willie. How often do you get to watch something on TV and be like, yeah, I kind of know that guy? It's just a cool feeling. And yeah, great championship overall. And so let's see, we're in 2025. Let's get it back there by 2032, I think would be a good plan.
I agree. It was fantastic. Really enjoyed it. But as always, shout out to groups that are about to depart from Cape Cod National Golf Club, Des Moines Golf and Country Club, Hollowbrook Golf Club, and Prairie Dunes Country Club. So shout out to them. They're about to depart. Weather's been great. Like I said, overseas, a couple days of rain recently, but overall it's been in the mid to upper 60s, which has been nice. So good blend of, you kind of want some conditions while you're over, but also some sunny days while you're overseas too. So yeah, looking forward to today's episode. It's a fun one.
Yep, no doubt about it. It's funny you listed off the handful of clubs, and it's just a small fraction of the clubs that are represented by our members over the next couple of weeks. I was looking at the board, if you will, for the groups that are set to depart, and it's like, wow, we were just talking about how we've hit the peak of the golf travel season, and yet we're just kind of riding that peak. You kind of peak and plateau for a little while because August is very busy. So whether you're traveling with us or you've done it another way, we hope you have a great trip across the pond. But yes, shifting back to today's episode, we are talking about day one, your arrival day, maybe the best day of your trip. And there's really no way to replicate the feeling that you have when you land and you've put so much time and thought coming into this trip. You've invested pretty heavily monetarily, let's just call it like it is, and you want everything to go right. But that smooth start to your trip, it's not a given. It takes a number of things coming together for you to hit the ground running and have that dream start, if you will. But it doesn't happen by accident. And so, what we're going to cover today are number one, a handful of things that if you don't have them in a row before you depart, they can seriously derail your trip. And number two, some ways that you can actually enhance the start of your trip and make it even better than you've even dreamed it was already going to be. But Connor, I'm curious from a planner's perspective, obviously you're dealing with this every single day. What's your approach and thought process going into the start of a trip?
It's a good question. And I think mostly it comes down to communication amongst the group. What does the group want to do on that first day? And what does everyone kind of feel most comfortable with? Maybe this is your first overseas golf expedition. You're exhausted that first day. It doesn't matter if you're traveling from Boston, one of the nearest U.S. airports to get over, or if you're coming from the other side of the coast, California, you're going to be exhausted. And it takes a toll on you, international travel. It doesn't matter the age or what have you, it does. And it just depends on, like I said, how you feel like for that first day. Some groups, you want to stay up and not fall asleep and battle the jet lag. And a good way to do that is to play arrival day golf, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Some types of groups just want to kind of settle in, get into their room and do some touring, or maybe just walk around St. Andrews, get a pint of beer before their check-in to their hotel happens. It really just depends on the group. And there's also some group members that want to do something different from the others. So again, it really comes down to communication and all those good things. A lot of times when our groups go for the first time, they're saying, hey, we want to play golf as much as possible. It's a round of golf every day, included in arrival day golf. I'll say this, a lot of times when groups come back to us for their second expedition, and if they do arrival day golf, that first one, usually they're not doing it for their second one because they kind of learn the lesson, if you will, as much as we can guide them in the right direction. And we get it. You want to play as much golf as possible, but there is something nice about kind of settling in, walking around the town or wherever you're at, and then kind of adjusting and then going on from there. So I think, like I said, overall kind of theme here is communication amongst the group, figuring out what everyone's preferences are, and take it from there.
Now, I feel like almost every episode, when I ask you, tell me about the planner's approach, what is it that you do at the start of the process? It almost always boils down to communication. It is just so funny how much having that conversation with the captain and the people who are involved in planning this trip, how vital it is. And if you don't have somebody who is talking through those things with you, you're just kind of at their mercy in terms of what you end up with on that arrival day and whether it aligns with your group. But yes, communication, absolutely vital. So within that, the first thing we're going to cover are flights. It's the very start of the entire thing, and nothing is going to derail the start of your trip more than if something goes sideways with flights. Well, there are two things in particular that, while you can't control what happens with the airlines and you can't control what happens with your connections and what have you, you can control these two things. Number one, you all need to arrive to the same airport. And number two, you need to arrive within as narrow of a window of time as possible. Let's say 2 or 3 hours. Now, the arrive to the same airport thing, that might seem like a pretty silly thing to suggest. However, we run into this every year. And it happens because if you look at a map, Edinburgh and Glasgow, the airports are only like 45 minutes apart. As you're going through the planning process, if you're not really coordinating as a group and everybody's just kind of doing their own thing in terms of booking their flights and when they're coming in and what have you, it is very easy for someone to look at the map and say, oh, there's a flight to Glasgow. I know they told us to fly into Edinburgh, but I'm just going to do this one. It's only 45 minutes. The problem with that is you don't want to arrive and have your group scattered to the winds because you do need to get everyone together. So, absolutely essential. Land on an airport and decide on where you're flying in. If you're headed up to the west coast of Scotland and you want to go to Glasgow, okay, but there's not as many flight options there. There's way more to Edinburgh. So be strategic about what you pick. Same thing goes with Ireland. Not everywhere has a great option for Shannon, but Dublin has tons of options. And so again, have that conversation amongst the group, but settle on one. The other, like I mentioned, is the window of time that you arrive. If you're coming in on a red-eye flight, most of those flights are going to come in pretty early in the morning. And they're all going to be relatively close together in terms of timeline, 2 or 3 hours apart. But if 4 or 5 of you are coming in on that red eye, and 4 or 5 of you are connecting at London Heathrow, well, half your group's going to arrive at, say, 8:30 in the morning, and half your group's going to arrive at 2:30 in the afternoon. The challenge there is then getting to your first destination. If you're going to Dublin and just staying in Dublin for the night or staying in Edinburgh for the night, okay, no big deal. But if the first destination for your group is, say, St. Andrews or the Highlands of Scotland, or you're driving from Dublin over to the West Coast, your driver host isn't going to pick up the morning group and then go back 2 hours away to the airport to pick up the afternoon group. You all need to arrive at roughly the same time so that you can make that journey together. The flip side of that is if the bulk of the group comes in one time or one airport, and there's one outlier person that's coming to a different airport at a wildly different time, that person's probably going to be booking their own transfer at their own expense and not using their included transportation to the first destination. So again, it all comes back to communication. If you are the group captain, you got to be engaged with this, have the conversation, set the parameters. We had a captain, I think it was earlier this year, it might have been your group, Connor, where he sent an email that basically said, you need to fly into Dublin Airport on August 5th by 10 a.m. at the latest. And if you can't make it by 10 a.m., you need to fly in the day before. Just laid it all out. Here's the rules. You're either in or you're out. So that's how you set it up for success, at least in terms of flights.
It's so true. And you gave some great advice. And yes, that was my group, and that was a great captain, and everything went very well from their overall expedition. But yes, I think if you're listening to this and you've got everything planned and you're about to purchase flights, because there are a lot of groups right now, because a lot of the flight times, especially for the summer months for next year, are starting to open up. So folks are asking about it. I actually had a call yesterday from a gentleman, just wanted to know the best practices for booking flights. And I would say if you're listening to this and you're going through this process now or in the future, I get it and we get it. A lot of folks have loyalty to a certain airline and want to fly, theirs. And sometimes it might be a different one compared to the other group. And that could also change the arrival times as well. But I think it just really comes down to communication and kind of making sure that the first day gets off to a good start. Do not, for the love of God, do not just book your flight and just assume all is good and merry, because when that does happen, we've had it multiple times, happened a couple of times last year. Groups, they're booking flights and it's 6 and 7 hours of difference between everyone. So it can be a challenge when it comes to that. So just again, communication, I guess what it comes down to. And then a lot of folks will, like I was mentioning, want to play arrival day golf on your first day. Just some things to kind of keep in mind when doing so is that flight arrival. We can go ahead multiple months out and book tee times for noon, but that can be sometimes before the flight times are even announced for that certain time period of when you're traveling. So we could book that in at noon and you're either getting in at 5 a.m. or way later than that. And it takes us some time to potentially change that, or a lot of times we'll kind of keep that first day open until your flights are booked and then see what the best tee times are available, or also book a golf course that has more flexibility than the kind of bigger name courses. And you also don't want to play a bigger name course for your first day in country as well. So it kind of varies on that, but I would say kind of figuring out how much time is it going to take our group, the last arrival, to get through customs, to get your bags, to get into the coach, to drive to the golf course, warm up, hit golf balls, maybe grab lunch or something. There's more time when it comes into this. So there's a lot of things that go into it. So that's kind of what I would mention about arrival day golf.
Well, and those are all great points. And a couple of things in particular I found interesting. Number one was at some point you said the last arrival. And that's a point that I hadn't really considered. You have to kind of shift your thinking in terms of what time does the last person arrive? When does the last group come off the course? Those types of things are going to often be driving the timing of what follows. Your driver host isn't going to leave the airport until the last person has arrived. You're not going to be able to go to dinner until the last group has come off the course. And so, in terms of arrival, you need to think in terms of when does that last person get in and then go from there. All the more reason to have that narrow window of time so that, those early arrivals aren't stuck waiting for someone who's getting in so much later. The other thing you touched on is for your arrival day round, try not to schedule one of your must play courses for that round. First off, you're going to be exhausted, you're going to be jet lagged, your game is not going to be as sharp. You're probably not going to enjoy the course as much as you would have if you played it later in the trip. But the other reason is if your flights go sideways, there's a good chance you miss that round altogether. So, if you can, try to schedule a course that, okay, if you miss that one, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, we try to do this by default, but listen, it's not always possible because, as we touched on in the last episode, these are private clubs. They have limited visitor availability. In recent years, some of those marquee courses have limited their visitor availability even further. So you might not have any other option, especially if you're late to the planning game in terms of where that round falls into your trip. But if you can avoid it, you absolutely should. It's probably not going to surprise anyone to learn that I'm not all that bullish on arrival day golf, mostly because no matter how many times I go over, I kind of follow the same pattern. I land, I find an iced Americano and a pastry, and I have a second wind that runs until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. but then the wall is very real. And the last place that I want to be when that wall hits is on the far end of a links. But if you're like me, don't just go to the hotel and rest and hang out. Keep moving, stay active, keep the blood flowing, try to knock off that jet lag. And the best way to do that is with some sightseeing. If you are in Dublin or Edinburgh or St. Andrews, as some good examples, there are some awesome walking tours that we can set up for you. Not only will you learn about the history and get a lay of the land of the city, but yeah, you're going to knock off some of that jet lag in the process. If there are some major sites in your area that you're headed to, the Giant's Causeway or the Cliffs of Moher or the Edinburgh Castle, use those hours to your advantage and go see those at that time, because later in the trip, you might not have that opportunity depending on how aggressive your itinerary is golf wise. So, sightseeing is a great way for you to acclimate and combat the jet lag without tacking on that arrival day golf. Because, look, you're going to be playing more rounds of golf in the next 5, 6, 7 days than you might in a couple of months back home. So, factor that into your thinking. Where is your wall? If you're like me and that wall hits at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, do some sightseeing, have an early dinner, get to bed early, and wake up the next morning refreshed and ready to go.
I always try and to not take a nap during the day because it's going to wreck you for the rest of the week when you're overseas. And doing something like that is like get the blood flowing, do a tour, walk around. St. Andrews has multiple different tours around the town if you're there, and just so many different options. But yeah, stay active. Try your best to stay up until at least 7, 8 p.m. or so. Get a good meal in, and then off and running for the rest of your trips. Our next kind of point here is go a day early. This can very much help just to kind of again acclimate yourself to the trip, especially if maybe some folks are coming from the west coast of the United States and some are coming from the east. The flight times could be completely varying, and you could be flying in late in the afternoon. It takes another day to just kind of acclimate. The other thing too is just in case there are any flight issues, that can help too. Just another day, just in case there are any. We've talked about the horror stories multiple times on London Heathrow. Brandel Chamfleet had a great Twitter thread going about his luggage with an airline in and around London. You can probably imagine which one it might be, but multiple different issues there. And some folks had some going around the open. That, again, gives you an extra time, an extra day to kind of acclimate, get everything kind of situated just in case something does happen. Even if you do arrive early and luggage doesn't make it, you can have that extra day for your golf clubs too. So, like I said, go an extra day. That'll definitely help. Gets everyone kind of acclimated and kind of ready to go.
Yeah, no, it's a great tip. I think having extra time is never a bad thing. It's when you're trying to cut it too close that you're just asking for some kind of stress to be injected into your trip. So if you can afford to go the day ahead in terms of time being away from home and what have you, go a day ahead. What's the worst that happens? You get an extra day to do some sightseeing, you get acclimated, and then if you are playing arrival day golf, you're ready to go. But the same advice sort of applies. If you are going a day ahead, pay special attention to where your trip is actually beginning. Don't have yourself positioned in Glasgow if the rest of your group is arriving in Edinburgh, or maybe even look into what is your first hotel. Maybe you can just tack on that first extra day there, which certainly is something that many of our members will do. That's kind of the approach that they will take. So for my last one, obviously this is an exciting day. You've put so much time and energy and looking forward to this, and you've been counting down, and you've had a text thread with photos, and everybody's just been amped. Start with something special. Maybe you have a whiskey tasting at room 116 in the Rusacks in St. Andrews, or do something similar at the Old Course Hotel, or put together a private dinner. There are so many private dining rooms and so forth that we can set up for your group. Whatever you do, it essentially provides a couple things. Number one, it's a way for you and the group to kind of get together, raise a glass, soak up that camaraderie of the first day of the trip. But the other thing is, if you're the captain, it gives you an opportunity to check a couple boxes. You can run through the itinerary of the days ahead, because more often than not, there are people on your trip who have not read the itinerary. So you need to help them understand what the days ahead look like. If you're playing any games or you got any wagers and what have you going, you can walk through those. If you have a person that's managing that, which you probably should, it's not something you as captain you need to do. It gives you an opportunity to lay all that out, to maybe do a pairing party or whatever you want to call it. And then the last is to kind of make sure everybody has their ducks in a row for some of the finer details. If you're playing golf the next morning, does everybody have local currency for the caddies? Things like that. It just gives you an opportunity to kind of check some boxes, make sure everybody's on the same page so that not only your first day gets off to a smooth start, but that smooth start continues for the days that come.
Yeah, Deej, those are great points. And we just had a group travel over. They're actually currently over in St. Andrews, but they flew overnight and they decided to not play arrival day golf. They flew into Edinburgh and we're checking into Turnberry, but they arrived fairly early, so we needed for them something to do. And they did a private whiskey tasting in Edinburgh. So they drove in the city, did the tasting there. It was, I think, 2.5, 3 hours long. They had a great time, went through different bottles. Kind of, it was a learning experience too. So it was a cool kind of historical thing. They did talk about the games they're playing. I got the rundown of what they were playing. And then kind of when their rooms were available at Turnberry, they went over. But yeah, final thoughts. Again, communicate, make sure everyone's on the same page. Get that advice that even my group captain last year that said, hey, this is the arrival time, plus or minus 60 to 90 minutes. And if you can't make it during that time, then come the day before. And that helped. And they had an absolutely amazing trip and a seamless process from logistics on their part, front end and back into the trip.
That's all great stuff. And hopefully, the tips that we've covered today, all of it is just geared to that smooth start. Because the last thing you want, again, after all of this thought and after all the counting down and so forth, is to have something go sideways right off the bat. You mentioned one last thing that I think we've got to add, and you were talking about the gents at Turnberry and that they were there too early and they needed to kill some time. If that's a thing for you, if your group is going to be a little hung up on can we get in our hotel rooms, are we going to be able to freshen up or what have you, bear in mind that if you're taking the red eye, you're probably arriving 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. And at peak season, your hotel is probably not going to be ready. So if you want to ensure that your room is available, you would book it for the night before. Maybe you just book one room and then you can each kind of pop in and freshen up. But if you have it booked for the night before and you advise the hotel, hey, I'm on a red eye, or you let us know that you want to do that, then your rooms will be ready and you can get settled in right off the bat. But with that, we're going to draw this one to a close. As usual, we will link to some guides in the show notes that will accompany the episode. If you have any questions, send us an email, golf@haversham.com. You can DM us on social media or go to haversham.com/podcast and record your question there. We would love to feature you on an upcoming episode. We will be back again soon with another episode. But until then, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest and life at its best.